In 1965, at New York's JFK Airport, a young man in a Pan Am pilot's uniform boarding the plane wasn't headed for just another flight. He was about to embark on one of the most daring crime sprees in American history.
Frank Abagnale.
Frank Abagnale scammed banks and businesses out of an estimated $2.5 million using forged checks and false identities.
Frank Abagnale Jr., a 16-year-old runaway with a genius for deception. This wasn't a simple prank. His stint as a pilot was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would have him impersonating lawyers and doctors and cashing $2.5 million in fake checks across 26 countries. But how did a teenager pull off such mind-bending feats? Little did anyone know that this audacious act would spark a relentless, years-long manhunt by the FBI, turning into a real-life cat-and-mouse chase that would eventually lead to Hollywood fame. So what pushed a young boy to live life on the run, bluffing his way into world-class professions, and playing a game so dangerous he'd soon become the agency's most wanted? And would Frank ever meet his match? This high-stakes saga poses a timeless question. What's the boundary between genius and deception? Frank Abagnale's story reveals how easily trust can be manipulated by charisma and audacity. It's about the blurred lines between right and wrong, hero and villain. Was Frank a cunning mastermind exploiting society's blind faith, or merely a lonely youth running from harsh realities? Embedded in this thrilling ride is an unsettling theme. The charm combined with calculated deceit can unlock almost any door, but can anyone truly outrun the eventual consequences? As we follow Frank's heart-pounding cons and narrow escapes, we're prompted to ponder a deeper truth. Even the most skillful illusionist cannot elude reality forever. Will Frank's daring escapades ultimately catch up to him? Frank Abagnale Jr. grew up in the picturesque suburb of New Rochelle, New York, during the early 1960s. His father, a charismatic businessman, unknowingly taught young Frank the power of persuasion and charm. But life at home deteriorated when his parents' marriage crumbled, leaving the family financially strained. Faced with the harsh reality of his parents' divorce, Frank chose to run. Alone and desperate, he discovered a unique talent, a gift for seamless impersonation and an uncanny knack for forgery. Soon, Frank's ambition outgrew petty schemes. Watching pilots glide gracefully through bustling airports, an idea took flight. Why not masquerade as a Pan Am pilot? So donning a crisp, stolen uniform, and with a forged ID in hand, he began deadheading, hitching free flights all over the globe. His teenage charm and sheer nerve opened doors, allowing him to cash phony payroll checks without raising eyebrows. But Frank wasn't operating undetected. Enter Carl Hanratty, a tenacious FBI agent determined to catch the elusive youth responsible for an avalanche of rubber checks. The world watched as Frank's daring escapades unfolded, while Carl closed in, setting the stage for an extraordinary chase. One brisk Manhattan evening in 1965, Frank waltzed into a bank armed with meticulously forged checks, his confidence buoyed by early successes. With his Pan Am uniform lending him an authoritative air, he convinced the bank manager to cash several checks, effortlessly pocketing thousands of dollars. This pivotal moment laid bare a stark revelation. A uniform and a smile could elicit unwavering trust. It was like flipping a switch. Suddenly, the world seemed ripe for the taking. This bold move solidified Frank's path, propelling him deeper into a life of impersonation. Next, he set his sights on Atlanta, Georgia, where he audaciously posed as Dr. Frank Connors, charming his way into a hospital. This catalyst didn't just alter Frank's destiny, it sealed his fate and ignited the FBI's relentless pursuit. By 1966, Frank is living multiple personas, like a skilled illusionist, pilot, doctor, lawyer, and reveling in the thrill despite being weighed down by the constant danger of his charades. A duality gnaws at him. Can he sustain this high-stakes masquerade forever? or should he revert to a simpler life? In Atlanta as Dr. Connors, he finds a fleeting connection with a kind nurse, sparking thoughts of normalcy, stability, even love. Yet each escape and success lures him back. Meanwhile, Carl Hanratty zeroes in, piecing together the trail of checks and ties to Pan Am. The tension rises when Frank is almost nabbed in Boston as agents close in. Heart racing, Frank flees, contemplating surrender, but ultimately clinging to the illusion and thrill of the chase. The dilemma deepens. Should he stop before he's exposed, or keep playing this dangerous game where the stakes are life and freedom? Frank dares not only to continue his audacious escapades, but to escalate them. As Frank becomes bolder, he turns to law, taking a curious leap into yet another field of impropriety. In Louisiana, now as Robert Munjo, he manages to pass the bar exam, an incredible feat made possible by his photographic memory and astonishing audacity. Landing a job in the state attorney general's office as a legal assistant, Frank inches further into a surreal world where deception feels routine. It's a new chapter in his intoxicating saga, a youthful figure leading a facsimile life among real lawyers in the realm of crafted identities. On the flip side, Carl ramps up operations with Interpol, Frank's habitual pretense now spanning continents. Both sides settle into a rhythm, Frank testing boundaries while the law weaves a tighter net. The relationship between Frank and Carl adds emotional depth and pivotal intrigue. Carl, defined by his tenacity and a growing sympathy, starts to perceive Frank as not merely a criminal, but a youthful misfit lost in deception. Carl speculates, what drives this elusive figure in an endless run? Meanwhile, Frank feels a bizarre connection to Carl. Their game of cat and mouse adds comforting consistency to Frank's disorderly existence. This dynamic grows as Carl, poring over evidence, sees through the bravado to the lonely child behind it. Unexpectedly, there's a rapport and curious respect. A hunter recognizing some reflection of himself in the hunted. Frank's tale thrives on an eclectic parade of roles and riffs, turning the world of deception into a vibrant backdrop. From New York to Europe, Frank continues his performances in a dizzying spectacle of sleight of hand and clever hoaxes that turn the mundane into the extraordinary. As Dr. Connors, he charmingly sidesteps actual medical duties, letting his interns take charge to cover his inexperience. His daredevilry reaches a pinnacle when he assembles a crew of airline stewardesses, forming the guise of a promotional tour for Pan Am, another clever subterfuge that reinforces his air of legitimacy, resulting in enhanced freedoms with both financial and social dividends. Frank's dynamic streak and inventive ploys persist in making banks bend to his will. He adopts different monikers, becoming anyone he needs to be. Frank Williams one day, Robert Conrad the next. Each city unlocks new adventures, enabling a life rich in luxury, women, and unfathomable anecdotes. Each encounter playing into his grand mosaic of counterfeit identities that highlight his daring defiance of norms. In a whimsical twist befitting a thriller, Frank disguises himself as a Secret Service agent to evade Agent Carl, a delightful ruse shrouded in anticipation and the surreal. This escapade culminates in a comic relief moment as Carl mistakenly leaves Frank's room, tricked not by comprehensive deception, but by a cultivated craftiness reflecting his own trust in established systems. Yet, in the midst of masquerades, Frank encounters decipherable truths about vulnerability during transient solitude moments, amplified by the masked smiles over shared phone calls with Carl. The self-awareness blooming within hints at latent unrest. However, the temptation of conquest keeps him spiraling deeper into deception's embrace. In his prime, Frank lassos every possible angle depicting chutzpah at its highest zenith. Irony is ripe throughout scenes portraying stiff account managers apologizing to this youthful pretender in response to his nimble linguistic acrobatics. Cities like Rome and Stockholm become stages flaring with adrenaline as he relishes evasion from close encounters, fueled each time by instinct and incorrigible wit. Perhaps the pièce de résistance of Frank's narrative wonderland is his creation of fake Harvard credentials, testament to a meta-world where integrity is architected around his visage, compelling contrast between bizarre audacity and vulnerable youth. For Frank, risk begets reward. Rewards inflate ambitions. Culminative antics yielding legendary status, weaving mythic rings around each crafted persona. Journeying through Europe, Frank nimbly sidesteps capture, even thwarting vigilant intuitions with ease. Yet amidst bravado and youth, the wonder lingers. Will the music stop, leaving Frank to reconcile the dance with an expected reckoning? As the curtain draws on Frank's whirlwind escapades, the safety net begins to fray. It's 1969, and Frank, now a 21-year-old with notoriety, feels the heat like never before. The FBI is closing in, with Agent Carl Hanratty relentlessly scrutinizing every lead. Frank moves from country to country, but his options are running thin. The once unguarded airports become battlegrounds as security tightens, and banks grow wary of his antics. Each check he tries to pass risks the watchful eyes of tellers. Suspicion tails him at every turn. In Europe, Frank attempts to sail past suspicion like before, but a slip leads him into a trap. An alert Air France crew member, who remembers him from a previous encounter, tips off the authorities. In Montpellier, the French police tighten their grip, executing a raid with Interpol's backing. With nowhere left to flee, Frank is captured amid a storm of flashing cameras. The ruse is over. Alone in a French prison, Frank endures the stark reality of his cons. The jail conditions are harsh, cold, silent, and devoid of the thrill he once thrived on. His youth faces a bleak curtain call, far from the captivating heists. Frank's charisma and quick wit now seem trivial. He's a man out of tricks and echoingly sentenced. But in this gloomy chapter, the world's gaze shifts towards his next unanticipated move. The capture emits a sigh of relief across law enforcement, but the story's end is far from resolved. Just as Frank settles into the monotonous life of imprisonment, murmurs of incredulity surface. Did Frank embellish his feats to heighten his saga? Whispers suggest not every impersonation was as seamless or every escape as dramatic as told. The line between fact and fiction blurs with unchecked curiosity. Frank's legendary facade, crafted over years in checks and charming deception, faces skepticism. Was the grandest trick yet convincing all, viewers and pursuers alike, of its intricacy? This twist births intrigue. If this master deceiver managed to spin truth into his own legend, what else within his escapades remains unseen? The media buzzes with questions. The lines of his narrative prompt disbelief, yet also captivate. Even today, mystery and deception dance on time's edge, infusing curiosity and wonder into the realms of this cat-and-mouse chase. Frank's saga resonates beyond the curtain of his capture, pivoting to broader instances of deceit in an interconnected world. If one individual could ripple echoes across continents during the 60s, what might today's digital equivalent conjure in an electronic web of vulnerabilities? The tale foretells shadows of new age fraud, technological advancements readying stage for modern grifters. The resounding edges of his youthful escapades transform into lessons of scrutiny and vigilance for institutions. The overarching intrigue also stretches into the realm of trust. Has Frank, now on the rightful side of the law, indeed traded deception for authenticity? Or does the lurking fame of his past inflame trust issues? Frank's transition from master trickster to esteemed fraud advisor remains curious. His past walks alongside him, an echo compelling both admiration and skepticism. Each undertone nudges broader reflections. From the legacy and lessons of Frank leaps a nested world cloaked in ambivalence, authenticity pitted against fame's allure. Deceptions evolve, forming vast labyrinths, still unbeaten and unexplored. Frank remains tethered to his script, yet whispers across decades incite our murmuring hearts, questioning just how deep into the lie the truth may run. What future storytellers arise, kindling curiosity into flames anew?